All right, thanks, Erin. Um, Hi, everyone. I am Bridget Almus, Director of Operations for Community Supported Technologies at Lyrasis. I joined Lyrasis this past May, and one of my goals for my first year here is to conduct a comprehensive analysis of the Lyrasis organizational home model. Erin introduced the concept of the organizational home just now, but some of you may still be wondering what exactly the organizational home is. Well, I was too, and it turns out that it's very interesting. At Lyrasis, the organizational home is a function provided through the Community Supported Technologies and Hosting Division, and it is motivated by a need to have a place that can nurture and help sustain open source software for libraries, archives, and museums. As such, it provides many resources and services through shared infrastructure to enable programs to focus on program-specific needs and priorities without the burden of needing to build up some of the common services that are needed to run a program, such as human resources, information technology, member processing and invoicing, and so on. The model has grown up organically over the years, starting out pretty modestly, like this little cottage with a single program. In 2012, ArchiveSpace, which is an open source archives information management application, was the first community supported technology program to find a home here. And ArchiveSpace really was the initiator of the approach. ArchiveSpace was joined in 2014 by CollectionSpace, which is a web-based open source collections management software for cultural heritage organizations and museums. And in 2019, with the merger of DuraSpace and Lyrasis, three more programs joined the family: Fedora, DSpace, and Vivo. So now our home has evolved into something a little bit more interesting. We have five very different programs. Each is at a different stage on its journey to sustainability. Each has a different governance structure, and each has a different user community. So trying to balance the tensions between a desire for consistency on the one hand and the diverse needs of these different communities on the other, it was starting to feel like it might be a bit haphazard in places. And this is fairly normal, of course. In most households, each inhabitant has a slightly different understanding of what the home is and different expectations for what it needs and wants from its home, and vice versa, of course. Um, we do want to be able to continue to grow this program in a thoughtful way. And it's a good time to step back and assess and make sure that the foundations for that growth are strong and that we can move forward intentionally. So my goals for the analysis I'm undertaking are to first analyze what we have today, looking specifically at what's working well, what are some common challenges, and what are the financial implications and trends. And then to use the findings from that analysis to clearly articulate the model, both to internal and external stakeholders, including what are the core principles that are behind it, what are the characteristics, including what services the home offers the programs and what expectations it has of them, and what the value proposition is, both to Lyrasis and to the programs. And to produce a summary of that analysis that includes the findings about what's working well and what could be done differently, some recommendations for what we might change and how, and what we want to be sure to keep, and then some clear next steps for taking action. Doing the analysis has to start with trying to understand exactly what this thing is to all the stakeholders involved. And I don't know how many of you are familiar with the parable of the blind man and the elephant, but that's an analogy that has felt pretty apt to me as I embark upon this. Each stakeholder has a slightly different perspective, none of which is incorrect, and all of which are essential to getting the complete picture. So this is how I've been approaching the task. I've been holding several information gatherings interviews with different stakeholders, starting with the individual program staff, branching out to staff within other divisions at Lyrasis, and then to volunteers who serve on the governance bodies of each of the programs. As one outcome of these discussions, I've also been trying to clearly identify and quantify the services that are provided through the functions of the organizational home. and then to get an understanding of how those services match with the actual needs and expectations of the programs. It has also been important to try to differentiate the roles and responsibilities, particularly as hosting services grown up at Lyrasis in parallel with the organizational home function. It can be confusing to understand what hosting does versus what the organizational home does versus what is the responsibility of the program itself. And then where do those things overlap and intersect? So in this diagram here, you can see an attempt at trying to sort those things out. And even if it feels haphazard at times, the details are different across the programs. There are some core principles that underlie the model that are really starting to emerge pretty clearly. This is an early draft of their articulation, and you can see that mission alignment, transparent and collaborative stewardship, a nonprofit open source ethos, and committed program governance are really the key elements behind this. And while the analysis is still underway and a picture of what exactly the model is today is still emerging, there are some things about the value proposition that pretty much everyone I've spoken to seem to agree upon. Um, it provides a neutral home beyond the borders of the originating institutions. A lot of times, open source technology starts at one institution, and then in order to continue on its journey towards sustainability, having a neutral home to grow that is really beneficial. It also signals Lyricist's belief in the program's technology and goals to the wider community, and it enables the community to focus on program-specific needs and priorities. And Aaron spoke about that a little bit earlier. It also provides access to a deep reserve of experience. Lyrasis has this "it takes a village" model that is really, if you haven't checked it out, you can find it at itab.lyrasis.org. And it's a really wonderful, comprehensive set of toolkits and exercises and things to think about as you're taking a program through the journey to sustainability. And finally, being part of the organizational home at Lyrasis means being part of a family of sister programs with common values, needs, and interests. So already we're getting a good picture of where we are and where we might need to go. One thing that is emerging is a need to support programs at different stages of their life cycle, including possibly an incubation option for programs early in their journey to sustainability, as well as looking at opportunities for potential alignment with the facets of the "it takes a village" model. However, there is still quite a bit more work to do before the analysis is complete, and there will certainly need to be iterations with everyone who has provided input into it before we can move on to the next steps. So stay tuned. I will stop sharing, hopefully. I can get my mouse over to stop sharing so I can take any questions.